Legal immigration is a symbiotic relationship. Illegal immigration is a parasitic relationship, disproportionately benefiting the illegal immigrants. So this whole debate about comprehensive immigration reform is not about immigrants, but illegal immigrants and how to deal with them. Tonight we're going to lay out simple solutions. That'll be a bit later, but right now I want to explain what is coming if the Gang of Ocho succeed in passing their bill. Those currently known as illegals will be made legal by being given legal residency. They'll actually have more rights, lower taxes, and more opportunities than citizens, including those who legally immigrated here. It'll create a special class that we will call the residents formerly known as illegals. Now, I'm going to give you some examples of how they will be treated as a special class. Let's take public education first. In 1982, the Supreme Court ruled that every child must be given a free education, regardless of immigration status. Since then, illegals have received a free K-12 public education, regardless of taxes paid into the system. Lots of American citizens don't pay taxes and end up getting a free public education. So that's pretty much so far a wash. It's the same as being a citizen. But when a child is signed up for classes, the school is required to ask for certain paperwork. Non-citizens cannot provide that paperwork. Those requirements are just waived. Therefore, citizens have an extra burden, albeit a small one, that non-citizens do not. So nothing will change under the Gang of Ocho's bill. Therefore, the residents formerly known as illegals will have a slight advantage over citizens. College in some states is really tricky when it comes to in-state tuition. Some states have already offered in-state tuition discounts to illegals, and some have outright banned it. Now, that is going to change with the new Senate bill. The residents formerly known as illegals will be just like citizens. They'll be eligible for the same in-state resident tuitions. So that makes them at least the same. Now, access to taxpayer-funded health care. This is where it gets really, really tricky. Immigration reform in 1986 prohibited illegals from getting federal benefits. However, through lack of oversight and loopholes, they've been able at times to actually get taxpayer money for health care. That will not change. We have no reason to believe there will be any greater reinforcement because they haven't enforced it in the past. The residents formerly known as illegals will still, like all people, be able to go to an emergency room without being turned down. It's the law. Hospitals simply consider that the cost of doing business, and/or they get taxpayer subsidies. Either way, citizens are going to continue to pay for non-citizen. So nothing changes with them getting free stuff. But they already have had an advantage. So we'll give that advantage to the residents formerly known as illegals. Although those who support the immigration bill are quick to point out that the Gang of Ocho's bill prohibits the residents formerly known as illegals from getting government handout, it actually sets up a better system for them. The bill specifically says that this new class will not be eligible for programs like the Affordable Health Care Act. Sure, they'll not have access to the health insurance, but they'll also not be forced to buy it. They'll not have to pay a fine if they don't have insurance. And since the Supreme Court, of course, ruled it's a tax, that means that these elite, the residents formerly known as illegals, will be taxed less than citizens. They can still buy it if they choose, and they'll be able to buy it with the new rates via the exchanges. The residents formerly known as illegals will have it better by being taxed less. They'll have more options and more freedoms given. So we'll have to give this one to the residents formerly known as illegals. That's not looking too good so far, is it? I believe in competition. I reject the notion that immigrants take jobs. Illegals, however, do. And the residents formerly known as illegals certainly will. Obamacare imposes a fine on employers who don't offer health insurance to its workers. This will not apply to the residents formerly known as illegals because they're not citizens. So employers will not have to provide insurance and will not be subjected to the fine if they don't, which gives employers an automatic cash incentive to hire the residents formerly known as illegals and to actually fire American citizens to replace them. Clearly, the residents formerly known as illegals have an advantage there. It's a de facto advantage. Driving privileges are already available in a handful of states for people who are not citizens. Illegals are able to drive in some states, and all non-citizens, if they are legal residents, are able to drive. Under the Gang of Ocho's immigration bill, the residents formerly known as illegals will be eligible for driver's license they again would be the same as citizens. So we'll give this one to both. Many illegals have been working illegally for years, often not paying income tax by working under the table and therefore not paying taxes. Contrary to the claims of Marco Rubio and others that they won't have to pay back taxes and even pay a fine, the residents formerly known as illegals will only have to pay back taxes, and here's the key, if the IRS can prove that they owe. If they already have a file, they've started a record on them. They'll essentially have that wiped clean from their past. An amnesty for their unpaid taxes. By the way, there's also an amnesty for employers who broke the law. Yeah, that hired the illegals. They'll not be prosecuted for hiring illegals in the past and won't have to produce the withholdings that they were supposed to withhold but did not. So, who do you think has the advantage there? Oh, yeah, clearly. Voting. Doc, illegals can't vote. Non-citizens can't vote. Well, there are already some cities today that allow non-citizen residents to vote in schools and local elections. Chicago, for example. Turns out it's not just dead people who get to vote. It's a bunch of non-citizens as well. In fact, Maryland, Missouri, they allow local municipalities to vote. Now, the key is that most allow non-citizens the right to vote, only legal residents. That would, of course, include, in the future, the residents formerly known as illegals. They would be essentially the same as citizens. So that's pretty much a push. Jury duty may seem like a privilege, or seem like a problem for a lot of people. You may not like it, but it is a duty and a privilege in America, and it's very important. In April, California became the first state to lawfully allow present immigrants to serve on a jury, and that will, of course, extend to the residents formerly known as illegals if they are lawfully legal residents. They will be allowed to serve on jury duties, allowing them to serve on jury duties just like citizens, which makes them the same.